I took a night job at an Arctic warehouse a few weeks ago. I was saving up for an ice fishing trip I always dreamed about. At 32, I thought I was seasoned enough for it. I figured the quiet solitude would give me time to focus. Little did I know, that warehouse wasn't what I expected. The place was so isolated, surrounded by endless snow and ice. The fluorescent lights flickered like they were trying to send me a warning. They gave off a weird glow against the pitch black outside. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just a long night shift. On my second night there, everything seemed normal at first. I was going through my routine when I heard something. A clattering sound echoed in the vast space. It felt like it was coming from somewhere deep inside the shelves. My heart raced. I thought maybe it was just equipment settling or the wind playing tricks on me. I was alone in the middle of nowhere, right? But then, the feeling crept in that something was watching me. As the nights went on, things got strange. I started noticing that boxes weren't where I left them. It was as if someone was messing with me. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was just tired. But then, outside, I saw strange footprints in the snow. They didn't look like anyone I knew. Maybe a wild animal, I thought. But the uneasy feeling in my gut said otherwise. Then one night, I felt a chill that went beyond just the Arctic air. It shook me. I tried to shake it off. Who wouldn't feel a little jumpy alone in a place like that? I saw shadows dart past the taller shelves, teasing me. Items would go missing, tools, boxes I just set down. I knew I placed them there, but every time I looked for them, they were gone. I began second-guessing everything. Was I losing my mind? Am I just imagining things? The nights merged into a blur filled with dread and paranoia. I'd hear whispers, muffled through the cold, but I was too frightened to check. Was there someone else in the warehouse? Or was it all just in my head? Honestly, I didn't know. Then everything escalated. I turned a corner one night, and there he stood, just looking at me. For a second, I thought he was a manager or someone who got lost. But he didn't say a word. I felt my heart stop. I blinked, and he was gone. Just like that. I stood there, breathless, completely surrounded by silence. I was not alone, but I couldn't tell you what was still there with me. The fear gripped me harder than the cold. I couldn't shake it. I went home each morning, feeling the weight of something dark hanging around me. I still think about that night. I wonder if I really saw him. Whatever it was, it left me shaken. The warehouse wasn't just a job anymore, it was a puzzle I didn't want to solve. The next night, I could hardly sleep. My mind buzzed with images of that figure. Who was he? Why did he just vanish? I drove to the warehouse, dragging my feet. I wished I could call in sick, but I needed the money. As I entered, the familiar fluorescent hum greeted me, but there was something different. The air felt heavier, thick with tension. I walked the aisles, trying to shake off the knot in my stomach. I couldn't tell if it was anxiety about my job or fear of what lurked there. Halfway through my shift, I heard it again, a clattering, this time closer than before. My heart raced, pounding in my ears. I took a deep breath and approached the sound. I turned down an aisle, and what I saw stopped me cold. There was a box on the floor, one I had just stacked. I was certain I hadn't knocked it over. I stepped closer, and then I noticed something odd next to it, a small, torn piece of fabric caught on the edge of the shelf. It looked cheap and worn. My mind raced with possibilities. Had someone been here? I picked it up, feeling the cold fabric against my fingers. The sensation sent a chill through me. It was impossible, I hadn't seen anyone in days. I looked around, feeling like eyes were on me again. The shadows played tricks, whispering sinister threats in the corners of my mind. I quickly pocketed the fabric, rationalizing that it could provide answers. But each moment felt slower, stretching out, amplifying everything. Then I heard a soft rustle behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. Just rows of boxes and shelves. This isn't happening, I whispered to myself. I decided to focus on my tasks and forget about what I thought I heard. But as the night dragged on, so did my unease. I tried to keep busy, but the emptiness felt full of tension. The whispers returned, slithering in and out of my mind. I could almost make out words, but they fell silent the moment I concentrated. Finally, I took a break. I stepped outside for fresh air, hoping to shake the dread. The frigid wind pierced through my layers, but it cleared my head. As I looked out over the landscape, something caught my eye. A figure stood in the distance, half hidden by the swirling snow. I squinted, heart tightening in my chest. Then just as quickly, he vanished lost into the blizzard. I rushed back inside, heart racing. I wasn't imagining things anymore, and my breath quickened. The feeling of being watched persisted. That's when my eyes fell upon the security monitors at the front office. I had seen those before but never really paid attention to them. My instinct screamed at me to check. I navigated through the shadows, nearing the small room. As I flipped the monitors on, they flickered to life. I scanned the feed, the grainy images barely showing anything. Then, I froze. In the far corner of one camera feed was an unmistakable shape. A shadow moving swiftly among the stacks. I wasn't alone. Panic surged through me, and I slammed the monitor off. I had to get out. But as I turned, the dim lights flickered, plunging me into darkness. I stood in the darkness, my heart racing. The silence was deafening. I groped around, trying to find the wall. The fluorescent lights had flickered off, and I cursed under my breath. I needed to get back to the main loading area where my phone's flashlight could cut through the black. I stumbled toward the exit, feeling my way. Each box I brushed against felt like a trap, waiting to spring. Panic clawed at my chest. I could hear my own breath fast and shallow. The familiar sound broke the eerie stillness, but suddenly, I heard something else, the soft crunch of footsteps on the concrete. I froze, breath caught in my throat. I strained my ears, willing myself to hear more. The footsteps stopped, then resumed, slow and deliberate. They were too close, but I couldn't see anything. Adrenaline coursed through my veins. I could either stand there, paralyzed with fear, or move. I chose to move. I darted toward the loading dock, desperate for a place that felt less ominous. The heavy metal door creaked as I pushed it open. There was snow piled against the entrance outside. I fought through the icy wind, forcing myself to think clearly. I needed help, and my car was just a few feet away, my only sanctuary. But as I stepped into the blizzard, something made me pause. I glanced back at the warehouse. The flickering light ceased, and for a moment, it felt as if the building was alive and watching me. Then, from the corner of my eye, I spotted a shadow moving through the window near the office. My stomach twisted. The figure from the warehouse, the one I had seen on the monitor, was inside. I quickly ducked behind my car, pressing myself against the cold metal. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears. I couldn't see clearly, but I was sure he was searching, hunting maybe. Fueled by an impulse I couldn't explain, I pulled out my phone, its dim light casting long shadows on the ground. I illuminated the area around me, praying that nothing would jump out. Was I wrong to think I could handle this night job? Suddenly, I heard a loud bang from inside the warehouse, making me jerk my head up. My breath quickened. Whatever was in there had decided to make its presence known. I took a deep breath. I couldn't remain a bystander. Quietly, I circled around the back of my car, heading toward the warehouse entrance again. My heart pounded louder than the wind, and every step felt like a misstep. I felt as though I was being pulled into a web with no way out. Just as I reached for the door, I spotted the torn piece of fabric I had found earlier, fluttering in the wind at my feet. I picked it up, feeling the strange energy from it pulse through my fingers. In that moment, everything became clearer: the figure, the whispers, and the presence I felt. Before I could process it, the door swung open. Someone stepped out, cloaked in shadow. I took a step back, heart sinking. This was it. I had to confront whatever was lurking in my nightmare. I held my breath as the shadow stepped into the fading light of the warehouse door. The figure loomed larger as I squinted, trying to make out any details. My heart raced. This was the moment I'd been dreading, and yet I couldn't look away. "Who's there?" the voice called out, deep and echoing. It sent a chill down my spine. I knew I had to respond, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I stepped back, hoping the darkness would swallow me whole. The figure began to move toward me, slow but steady. I could see a glint of metal in his hand. Panic surged again, and I quickly glanced around for an escape route. The snow was deep, and the wind howled like a banshee. Either way, I was trapped between the warehouse and my car. "Come out, I don't bite," he taunted, his tone dripping with mockery. I didn't want to believe it, but there was something oddly familiar about his voice. As he got closer, I recognized the torn fabric in my hand. It was from his clothing. My mind raced with questions. Who was he, and why did he seem so intelligent yet dangerous? I had to know, I had to confront this. Summoning every ounce of courage, I whispered, "What do you want?" The figure stopped. "You should not have come here," he replied, voice low, full of menace. "You don't understand what you're getting into." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. It was true. I was in over my head. "What do you mean?" I pressed, trying to sound braver than I felt. He stepped farther into the light, and I finally saw his face, an unsettling mix of familiarity and something darker. My pulse quickened. I had seen him on the monitor before, but I couldn't place where. "You've seen what happens when the lights go out. You can't hide from them," he said, glancing over his shoulder as if wary of an unseen presence. "What do you mean, them?" I asked, urgency creeping into my voice. I still couldn't shake the feeling that my role in this was bigger than I realized. His gaze locked onto mine, and for a brief second, the tension felt like a thread about to snap. Then, I noticed a flicker of movement behind him. It was quick, just a shadow darting past the doorway. My instincts flared, this was no longer just a conversation. "They are coming for you," he warned, backing up slightly. "And it's not just me." I had no time to comprehend his words. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the depths of the warehouse, reverberating like thunder. The ground beneath us trembled, and my heart dropped. Whatever he had been warning me about was about to reveal itself. In that moment, I understood one thing: there was no turning back. I didn't know what threats loomed within, but I had to confront whatever it was. Then the lights flickered back on, illuminating the warehouse in an eerie glow. I saw figures emerging from the shadows, their features hidden but the menace all too clear. Without thinking, I bolted back toward my car, the torn fabric still gripped in my hand. I dared a glance over my shoulder. The figure I had confronted now stood amongst them, a ghost in a phantasm of horror. As I fumbled for my keys, I realized I was no longer just in danger, I had stumbled into something much more terrifying. I had to escape, but the sense of dread loomed larger than the blizzard outside. And just when I thought I was almost there, I heard a voice whispering my name, chilling my bones. "Emily." I sprinted toward my car, fingers trembling as I fumbled with my keys. The crunch of snow beneath my boots seemed deafening in the silence that surrounded me, but that was nothing compared to the whisper echoing in my mind. The figures in the warehouse were closing in, their shadows draped menacingly in the stark light. I slid into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut, heart racing as I finally managed to locate the key. The engine turned over, sputtering for a moment before roaring to life. Relief coursed through me, yet I didn't dare relax. I could feel the weight of eyes on me, the silence of the warehouse now a threatening presence behind me. As I reversed out of the lot, I caught a glimpse of the familiar stranger standing at the entrance, unmoving. My breath hitched as I recognized the steel glint in his hand. It was a knife. "Drive, Emily. Drive." I muttered under my breath, urging myself toward the road that cut through the snowdrifts. My thoughts raced. What had I just stumbled upon? Who were those figures? And why did he seem so intent on warning me? I turned the wheel sharply, navigating onto the icy road, sweat trickling down my back despite the freezing temperatures outside. I glanced in the rearview mirror, expecting to see figures chasing after me, but the warehouse stood still behind me, a black silhouette against the night sky. Then I saw it. A dark figure darted out from behind the warehouse and into the glow of my headlights. My heart stopped. It was one of the men from inside. I slammed on the brakes, sending my car skidding slightly. The figure paused in the road, hands raised, as if trying to signal me to stop. Fear coiled tightly around my stomach. Should I help? Was it a trap? My instinct screamed for me to keep driving, but there was something desperate in his posture. No, I couldn't afford to be weak now. "Get in!" I shouted, voice cracking with panic. A moment later, he flung open the passenger door and jumped in. "Go!" As I sped off, I glanced sideways at him. He was panting, eyes wide with fear. "They were after you, too," he gasped. I heard them talking. "We're in this together now." "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to keep my focus on the road. "What are they?" His face paled as he turned to look behind us. "You don't want to know. But you have to trust me," he said, his tone urgent. "We don't have much time." The blizzard picked up, snowflakes battering my windshield, and I struggled to see the road ahead. Just then, the headlights caught another figure darting into the treeline. My heart raced. They were hunting us. "Emily, don't let them close in," he shouted, gripping the dash. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement above the road, a dark mass blocking my path, hurtling toward us. I swerved to the right, barely avoiding a collision, but I could feel the encroaching barrage of shadows surrounding us. "We need to get to town. They won't follow in the city," he yelled, gripping the handle as I maneuvered past the treacherous roads. And just like that, I realized I was in deeper than I thought. This wasn't just about my job. It was about survival. Who were they? I pressed again, urgency in my voice. But before he could answer, I spotted headlights behind us, merging from the darkness like a predator stalking its prey. This was just the beginning, and as I pushed down on the accelerator, I didn't know if help was coming or if we were rushing straight into a trap. The engine roared as I pressed harder on the accelerator. The road was narrow and winding, and the snow intensified, swirling like a storm in my rearview mirror. "You said they won't follow into the city. Are you sure?" I glanced at my passenger. He nodded, eyes darting to the back window. "They don't like crowds. That's our best chance." The weight of his words held me in place, but the growl of approaching headlights urged me onward. I had to trust him, even if every rational part of me was screaming otherwise. "You better start talking," I said, adrenaline coursing through me. "Who were those people? Why were they after you?" He hesitated, his gaze fixed out the window. "They're part of a group," that he faltered, blinking rapidly as if the truth was hard to frame. "They deal with things that aren't normal." I tightened my grip on the wheel. "Normal? What do you mean?" "This isn't about smuggling or drugs, Emily. It's worse. You crossed into something dangerous." My stomach dropped, I felt the cold sweat creep back. "Dangerous how?" Before he could respond, a loud bang echoed behind us. The sound made my heart lurch, and I glanced in the mirror just in time to see one of the shadowy figures from the warehouse leap into view. He was holding a gun. "Faster," my passenger shouted, his eyes wide with panic. I slammed my foot down harder, the tires screeching against the icy road. A series of flashes lit up the rearview mirror as gunfire erupted, sending shards of terror through me. The first shot cracked like thunder, narrowly missing the car. "No!" I gasped, the sound of metal on metal ringing in my ears. "We can't go much faster. The road is too slick. Emily, we need to take a risk. Head to the right through the woods." He pointed ahead, just as another bullet shattered the silence. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, the woods looming dark and threatening. But the growling pursuit behind us made the choice clear. "Hold on!" I yelled, jerking the wheel to the right. The car skidded, tires fighting for grip as we veered off the road and into the tree line. Snow sprayed up around us, obscuring our path. The headlights from the pursuit faded slightly, but I could still hear them shifting gears behind us. Branches clawed at the sides of the car as I navigated deeper into the forest, the visibility reduced to almost nothing. "What now?" I spat, glancing at him. "Do you know these woods?" "I know the way to town," he said, resolute. "But we have to keep moving. They'll come after us." Suddenly, the vehicle lurched as it hit a thick patch of snow. The wheels spun, struggling. Panic surged within me. Come on," I muttered, frantically trying to steer us free. That's when I saw the flash of headlights again. More figures emerged from the road, cutting off our way back. "We're surrounded." The air grew thick with tension. With the feeling of defeat creeping in, I turned to him. "If we get caught, what happens?" He locked eyes with me, fear mingling with determination. "You don't want to know. But whatever it is, we can't let it happen." My breath caught as the realization hit me. We were deep in this now, and there was no turning back. As I wrestled the wheel, part of me wanted to scream, but a chilling thought silenced my fear. If I didn't find a way out, we'd end up just like the others. The tires spun uselessly, the car rocking as we sat stuck in the snow. I could hear the approaching footsteps crunching the frozen ground, muffled but growing louder. Panic clawed at my throat. "Do something!" I yelled, my heart racing. "Get ready to jump!" he replied, yanking off his seatbelt. "We can't stay here." Before I could process his words, he slammed open his door, the cold air rushing in, mixing with the heat of fear that was flooding my body. I hesitated for a split second, scanning the darkness around us. There was no choice. I unlatched my seatbelt and followed him. The snow swirled around us, immediate gusts biting at my face. I had no idea where we were headed, but if I stood still, they would find us. "Over here." He beckoned, running toward a thick cluster of trees. I could hardly see him against the white backdrop. I plunged into the shadows, pushing through the branches, my breath hitching as I strained to hear our pursuers. Suddenly, I spotted a small clearing a short distance ahead. The faint light from the moon shimmered off something metallic. It was a shed, partially buried in the snow. "Look!" I whispered, pointing in its direction. He nodded, and together we dashed across the clearing, barely making a sound. As we reached the shed, I pulled open the door, heart pounding. It creaked loudly, a warning of our presence. The inside was dark and cramped, the scent of rust and damp wood filling my nose. "Quick, inside," he urged, pushing me ahead. I stumbled in, straining to listen for any sign of the figures who hunted us. As the door shut behind us, the darkness enveloped us completely. I felt around, searching for anything that could help us defend ourselves. My hand brushed against cold metal. My heart raced harder when I realized it was a toolbox, rusty but intact. "Can you see?" he whispered. I searched for a way to create light. My fingers found a small flashlight, and I clicked it on. The weak beam flickered, illuminating the space just enough to make out the shadows of tools propped against the walls. "They're close," he muttered, pressing against the door. I could hear muffled voices outside, talking but not clearly enough to understand. I hoped they hadn't spotted us yet. "What's the plan?" I asked urgently, my voice trembling. "Do we just wait here until they leave?" "No." He shook his head. "We have to move again. We can't trust that they won't search here." A chill raced down my spine. "Why? What do you know?" Before he could answer, the door shuddered. Someone was pushing against it. I jumped back, gripping the toolbox instinctively, ready to defend myself. "Listen, whatever happens, don't fight unless I tell you to," he instructed, his eyes fierce. Then everything went still. The door remained still, but I could hear them outside, whispering. Each breath felt like a countdown. I realized I was holding that flashlight like it was a weapon, my pulse throbbing in my ears. I had no idea who they were or what they wanted, but one thing was clear, there was no way out but forward, and I hoped whatever was on the other side of that door didn't come in looking for blood. The whispers outside the shed grew fainter, and I couldn't tell if they were moving away or if they were just waiting. I exchanged a glance with him, the fear in his eyes mirroring my own. "Now what?" I whispered. He gestured toward the tools on the wall. "We need to find something useful." A hammer, a crowbar. Before he could finish, the faintest sound made my heart stop. A soft thud, then a scraping noise. My eyes darted to the door. They were still out there. I could almost feel them listening. I turned back to the tools and grabbed a rusted hammer. It felt heavy in my hand, comfortingly solid. "Do you think they'll find us?" I asked, feeling the heaviness of the air around us. He shook his head, but his expression said otherwise. "No one is supposed to be out here. If we keep quiet, we might have a chance." I held my breath, focusing on the sound of the hammer clinking against the toolbox. We both flinched when another noise cut through the night, a low growl, like an animal prowling close by. "Is that?" I started, but I couldn't finish the question. I was afraid it would make it real. "Stay calm," he murmured. "It could be anything. Focus." Suddenly, the door rattled violently. I pressed myself against the wall. I could see his fists clench, muscles tensed, ready to spring into action. Then, the door splintered open. The space around us flooded with cold air and pale flickers of moonlight. "Get back!" he yelled, shoving me further into the shadows. My heart raced as I held the hammer tightly, ready to swing. 3 dark figures stood in the doorway, backlit by the faint glow of the moon. They were silhouetted against the white, but I could make out the uneven shapes of their bodies. Panic surged as I realized they were imposing, and their movements were stiff and deliberate. "Hello." One called out, its voice eerily calm. I exchanged a quick glance with him. We had to act. "Now!" he shouted, lunging for the opening. The shock of his movement sent us into chaos. I followed, hammer raised, adrenaline coursing through me. The first figure turned, a shadowy face revealing a grim smile. I swung wildly, missing as the figure dodged to the side. I caught a glimpse of something glinting in its hand, a knife. "Run!" he shouted. I scrambled past him, crashing through the door, pushing into the frigid darkness where the tree's thicket stood. But I heard the figures following, their footsteps crunching through the snow as they advanced. I stumbled through the snow, every breath felt like it was freezing in my lungs. "Where do we go?" I gasped, desperate. "Follow me," he yelled, already turning deeper into the woods. The night felt alive around us, twigs snapping underfoot as I tried to keep pace. My heart raced. Then, just as I thought we had some distance, I heard it, a snarl, close behind, full of menace. That's when I saw it, the massive outline emerging from the shadows, long snouts glistening with moonlight, eyes piercing through the dark. Maybe the shed wasn't our safest bet after all, I thought, panic clawing at me again. But there was no time to think. We needed to keep moving, even as the hunters drew nearer. The fear didn't just flow through me, it gripped me, unyielding. I had to fight for survival in a world gone mad. The icy wind howled through the trees as we ran, my lungs burning with each frantic breath. I could hear the hunters behind us, closing the distance, but I dared not look back. Instead, I focused on my feet, my mind racing. Where were we even headed? Keep going. Just a little further. He shouted, his voice strained but full of urgency. We zigzagged through the trees, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers wanting to snag us. My heart thumped wildly, drowning out every other noise. All I could hear was the pounding of my pulse and the sound of our footfalls crunching on the frozen ground. Suddenly, I spotted a faint glimmer through the branches. A light. I squinted, pushing myself to run faster. It was a risky gamble, but we could find safety there. Over there. I yelled, pointing toward the light. Are you sure? He gasped. It's better than staying here. I retorted, desperate for any chance of escape. He nodded, and we adjusted our course, plunging deeper into the thicket. As we neared the light, it flickered, and dread twisted in my gut. What if it was just another trap? But we had to take the chance. We broke through the trees and stumbled into a clearing. There, half hidden behind a shed, stood a small cabin, its windows illuminated with a warm glow. The sight sent hope flooding through me. Stay quiet, he whispered as we approached. We don't know if anyone else is in there. I nodded, gripping the hammer tightly, my knuckles turning white. We crept closer, the door slightly ajar. I paused, peering inside. The interior looked deserted, dusty furniture and old photographs hung crookedly on the walls. But then I noticed a shadow move across the floor. My breath caught. Wait, I said, pulling him back. There is someone in there. He glanced over my shoulder, his eyes wide. Do we run? Or do we confront them? Before I could answer, a loud crash echoed from inside, followed by a tense silence. I felt a shudder of fear run through me. What was that? I don't know, but we can't stay here. He glanced around, then stepped carefully toward the door. Stop! I hissed, grabbing his arm. What if they're dangerous? We can't just stand out here, he said, his voice urgent. If that's another one of them. But just then, the door creaked open slowly, revealing a figure silhouetted in the light. Who is there? It called, voice raspy but calm. My heart raced. Run! I screamed, turning to flee, but it was too late. The figures were back, more of them this time, encircling us, their faces hidden in shadow. No! He shouted, gripping my arm. We have to fight. I swung the hammer at the nearest figure, but the moment my eyes adjusted to the light, I wished I hadn't. The face staring back at me wasn't menacing at all. In fact, it looked terrified. Please, you have to trust me, the figure urged, hands raised in surrender. I hesitated, confusion washing over me. I glanced at my companion, who was just as bewildered. Who are you? I asked, my voice shaky, unsure of what to trust. Friends. We're all in danger here, the shadowy figure replied. You have to listen. In that moment, as fear clamored within me, everything felt like it was about to slip away. But this time, my life and my choices were about to intersect with an unfolding nightmare much greater than anything I could have imagined. I felt the air shift, and for the first time since stepping into this surreal nightmare, I considered the possibility of understanding. The figures encircling us did not seem intent on violence. They looked frightened, too, their eyes wide, the tremors in their hands betraying their fear. Friends? I repeated, still gripping the hammer like a lifeline. What do you mean? But the figure didn't reply, only glanced over my shoulder, a flicker of panic washing over their face. I followed their gaze and froze. The night outside had grown darker, shadows coalescing into shapes that weren't there just moments before. Something was out there, something that made these frightened silhouettes appear stoic in comparison. "They're coming!" My companion yelled, but the inner group of figures remained still. "Get inside!" he urged, and in an impulsive motion, we retreated into the cabin behind the first figure. I felt the door slam shut behind us, the walls of the cabin closing in like a noose. A sense of suffocation enveloped me as 3 of the shadowy figures joined us inside. The small cabin was cramped, the smell of must and old wood heavy in the air. "What are you doing here?" the leader of the group asked, a woman with a haunted glint in her eyes. "You have to get out. There's no time." I didn't know who to trust. The conversation felt like a web laced with deceit, yet we had no choice but to listen. Other shadows pressed against the windows, and I could tell now that their whispers were synchronized with the shadows. It felt as if the very cabin was alive, pressing down on us. "What is happening?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "What are they? What do they want from us?" "They want to keep you here," the leader explained, breath hitching. "They feed off fear. They grow stronger in the dark. We've been fighting them for years, trying to contain what they are." "Contain what?" I demanded, uncertainty turning into frustration. At that moment, the door rattled violently. A swarm of shadowy figures surged against it. "We have to go." The woman's voice rose, urgency thrumming in every syllable. I caught my companion's gaze, and in an unspoken agreement, we looked back at the woman. "Lead the way," he said, and I felt a spark of trust flicker to life, despite the omnipresent danger. She grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward a back entrance as splintering sounds echoed from the front. "This is the way." We stumbled outside into the raw chill, the profound darkness enveloping us again like a thick cloak. The shadows outside were looming, swirling like a tempest. I felt as if I were being pulled into a whirlpool, threatening to drag me down. "Where now?" I panted, struggling to keep pace. "Downstream." She gasped, pointing toward a nearby narrow trail that snaked through the trees. "If we can reach the water, they can't follow." "Not on the river." As if hearing her words, the shadows surged from the cabin, a ravenous pursuit losing its restraint. One of the figures lunged forward, and in the chaos, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face. A chill crept down my back. Was it the figure from the warehouse? "No!" I shouted, but there was no time to process it. We dashed forward, weaving through tree branches that clawed at us with icy fingers. The cold air bit at my skin, sharper than ever, but adrenaline propelled me, almost whispering lies of safety interlaced with dread. I could still hear the murmuring threats of the shadows drifting on the wind, taunting me, feeding on my fear. Rounding a bend, we reached the riverbank, its dark waters swirling ominously beneath the moonlight. The icy flow mirrored the shadows' dance, and I felt a pang of hesitation. They would not follow us here, would they? "Jump!" my companion yelled. The urgency in his tone stoked my threatening doubts, but I had no choice. In a moment of reckless decision, I sprang into the water. It was frigid, shocking my body instantly. They were coming, shadows launching towards us. I felt the tug of icy currents around my legs, but I pushed against them, swimming toward the center of the river. The figures on the bank recoiled, hovering at the water's edge as something thundered through the forest behind us, resonating deep within my chest. The leader and my companion dove in after me, gasping as the water pulled them into the fray. I could see fear painted across their faces, but we had made it this far. As we fought against the current, I could still sense the shadows on the shore, their silhouettes twisting in the moonlight as they chanted in an eerie silence. Their words washed over the water as if trying to reach us, stretching the fabric of reality tauntingly thin. "Keep going!" the leader shouted, her voice rallying us. "We're almost through." Just when I thought they had given up, I turned to see the dark mass surge toward the water's edge, but to my shock, the river began to ripple and swell in response. The shadows recoiled, their shapes bending away from the water as if held at bay by some unseen power who or what was influencing this. Then came the sound, an otherworldly growl, more a hiss than a growl, bursting from the depths, echoing off the icy banks. It was unlike anything I had ever faced. It would deter them. "Keep swimming," I urged, feeling the current lighten our load, and for a moment, I thought I heard a voice that seemed familiar whispering my name in the undertow. But there was no time to contemplate. We forged ahead, adrenaline pumping through our veins, and together, we launched ourselves unnaturally far across the surface, the icy waters pulling us through. As we swam, the power that resurrected from the depths surged in waves, and in that moment, I knew something remained unresolved. The entity lurking beneath the water's surface held darker truths than I was ready to confront. We reached a narrow bank lined with jagged rocks, collapsing onto the shore in exhaustion. Panting and shivering, we looked back, heartbeats echoing the silent air. The shadows lingered at the water's edge, swirling, growing restless and menacing. They shifted uneasily, looking more like wisps of smoke than solid forms. There was an intensity about them that whispered of dreams long buried and fears momentarily subdued. "We made it," my companion murmured, relief spilling into his voice, but the fight wasn't over. I could still feel the danger breathing in the shadows. "Are they gone?" I asked the leader, but I already knew the answer. The flickering forms watched us with relentless hunger, their voices still haunting the air. As the cold settled into my bones, I felt the weight of unanswered questions pressing on my shoulders. I didn't know what was out there. Were they spirits of the lost, manifestations of our deepest fears, or something far worse? "What do we do now?" I asked, hoping to discern some course of action, but as I looked around, the swirling shadows seemed to coalesce into shapes I couldn't name. "We need to regroup. Safety in numbers is all we have," the leader said, determination aligning her brow. But I felt no assurance in their plan. All around us, remnants of the past whispered in the darkness as the echoes of their cries faded into the night. Safe. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The knowledge that I wasn't alone, that darkness and light danced hand in hand, left a lingering sense of unease as I faced into the unknown. The air grew thick again. Whatever chased us had yet to relent. What we confronted was only the prelude to something much deeper. As I stood amongst those spectral figures, staring back into the fabric of shadows, I understood one thing: out in the vast darkness, my journey was far from over.